Good evening. It is 6:02. I will now call to order the April 8th, 2019 Conservation Commission meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Are there any public concerns, non-agenda items? All right, please note there is a sign-in list going around the room. If you could take a moment to sign in as well, that would be appreciated. Moving on to public hearings and meetings. Public hearing, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation filed by Beacon Solar LLC, Mass DEP file number 151300. Applicant is seeking confirmation of various wetland boundaries at 50 Florence Road, map 115, lots 2 and 5, continued from January 13th, 2019. Is there anyone here for this item? As interest or as a butters?
Concern.
Okay. Mallory, do you have any updates? There was some correspondence about the third-party reviewer getting out there last week.
I believe that's changed to this week.
Okay.
And the applicant had flagged last week.
So they refreshed the flagging last week?
Yeah.
Okay. So we expect the third-party reviewer out there this week. And we would expect to get their report on things. Can you reach out to him on a schedule for that?
Yeah, we didn't get to that point yet. I think the applicant had a delay in there when they were planning to refresh. I think they had to get the cost authorized to refresh. So they had pushed things back a little bit. So Dan was kind of, from GZA, was trying to catch up to get out there. So that could be the next step that we check in with them about.
Could you find out if it will be feasible to get that written evaluation before our next meeting on April 22nd?
Yeah, I'm gonna check in with him and ask him if that's feasible, and then the applicant is on the thread, so.
The applicant is on the email chain?
On the email chain.
Okay.
Yep, so.
No, that's fine. I wanted to make sure I understood what you said. All right. So, any further discussion? Motion to continue to April 22nd, 2019 at 6 p.m.
Motion to continue to April 22nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right. Next item is a public meeting request for determination of applicability from One Industrial Lofts LLC for vegetation clearing and slope improvements within the buffer zone of various wetland resource areas and in bordering land subject to flooding at 0 Arthur Street and 1 Ferry Street, map 131, parcels 1 and 2, continued from March 11th, 2019. The commission is in receipt of correspondence dated April 5th, 2019, requesting that they withdraw the RDA without prejudice and any plans that were associated with it.
That was actually received today.
Oh, it was received today, but it's dated April?
Yeah. I think he just wrote it on a different day.
Okay.
And then I forwarded that to DEP because they didn't get it.
Okay. So, motion to withdraw, to accept the withdrawal of the RDA without prejudice?
Motion to accept the withdrawal of the RDA without prejudice from One LLC.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. This will no longer be on the agenda. Okay. Next item on the agenda, request for certificates of compliance. Request for certificate of compliance, Riverside Industries, DEP file number 151290, 1 Cottage Street Bridge replacement across Broad Brook, continued from March 11th, 2019. Is there anyone here for this item? So for the record, the commission conducted a site visit this evening at 5:20. It was attended by, what is Kevin's last name?
Harrier?
Kevin Perrier from 5 Star and Char Geddes from Riverside. We viewed areas relative to revegetation, areas that were identified as grass on the survey drawings are now gravel. And the commission is going to review the file for pre-construction photographs to determine the nature of those areas. We also recommended that Riverside consider installing native shrubs in lieu of grass seed, and Chavar is going to look into that. Any other discussion? Motion to continue to April 22nd at 6 p.m.
Motion to continue to April 22nd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, next item is a request for partial certificate of compliance from JE&CC Keelik, Mass DEP file number 151168 for work approved under the order at 24 Holly Circle, subdivision lot 22, continued from March 25th, 2019. Is anyone here for this item? Mallory, do you have any updates?
I don't. I never had the applicant's email address. I've tried calling and I've left a voicemail, and I haven't heard back.
Last time there was an attorney for the applicant?
Yeah, that's who I was contacting.
Okay.
It's attorney Catherine Hancock.
Okay.
And that's the only phone number that and contact information that's listed.
All right. So, where are the minutes? Can you pass me the minutes? So where are we, Sergeant? Where are we with this?
So basically, we had determined that that order for that was for the drainage, culvert crossings, and road work, and that there was already a certificate of compliance that released this lot for that work. There was no, I haven't done a deep research in the DEP database for final numbers, but according to our files that we physically have, there was no order of conditions for the house.
I think the database only goes back to 174 for
Yeah.
Easthampton anyway.
Yeah.
So,
My understanding is that there wasn't a
filing?
filing for that.
You didn't find anything in the commission's files?
No. And I had gone through them previously with Attorney Hancock as well. So, and then going back with the other houses that were built there, a lot of them, when they were in the buffer zone, and it specifically said in the condition in the order, was that each individual house needed its own filing, and was consistent with what Kelly Ritchie had to say as well. So I talked to DEP, and they had said, filing at RDA is fine.
After the fact?
Yeah.
So, based on your review through the files with the attorney, are there any orders of conditions for?
For other houses?
Yes. there any
There
orders
were.
or- okay.
I didn't go through because each one would be pursuant to whatever the map and lot number was for that house or that street address. So it wasn't part of a subdivision plan. Like it wasn't always filed by the developer. Some of them seem to be filed by whoever bought the property, and I think that was the intent of why the houses weren't included in the original order.
Right. Okay. So, what is the next step? Wait to hear back from the attorney?
Yeah, so we don't hear back. I think that we could send a letter to the address that was on here that says, if you're not going to, if you could withdraw your request, or we might be able to just eliminate it if they're not going to come back, since there was already a COC issued on this. You don't really have any action that you could take other than a reissuance. So, I think giving it some more time to.
So you recommend we continue?
I would
to hear
recommend
back
we continue
from the attorney?
one more meeting and kind of
Okay.
see what happens if they come back. I think their sale date was beginning of April, so they might have just moved forward without it.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to continue to April 22nd at 6 p.m.?
Move to continue to April 22nd at 6 p.m.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. All right, we have no emergency certifications listed. Mallory, is that still true?
Yes.
Excellent. Enforcement actions, Bernard Gall, 37 South Street, EO 2013001.
I'm still missing information on this one. I think this is the one that I didn't get anything from anybody. And Dan, I got some stuff from Dan for autumn properties. That was helpful. But if you can double check your emails to see if you have anything for this one.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't have anything, or I didn't find anything anyways. So I know there's stuff out there, but
It would have been from 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
on the commission.
Okay.
I have a very
Thank you.
vivid memory of what certain drawings on that looked like. But
All right. Next. So moving on to the next item, Bernard Gall, vicinity of Groveland Street, Florence Road, map 115, lot 2, and map 128, lot 64, Mass DEP ACOP 00001958. No updates? Autumn Properties LLC, rear 161 to 165 Northampton Street, EO 2016001.
So, had some information that I had brought at the last meeting about this, that I had found information from Dan had given me a draft restoration plan, and then I had spoken with GZA about it. So I just need to go back and look through the minutes for this one. That's what's outstanding.
Okay. Okay, Cernak, Westview Terrace, map 165, lot 47, EO 2018001. Good evening. Hello. Could you introduce yourselves for the record?
My name is Kelly Cahill.
Kevin Cahill.
So, we took a break for the winter.
We did, yes. The seeding was done by December 3rd, and then we had completed planting the trees by November 1st. The recent windstorm took a few trees down, larger trees, but other than that, the saplings that we planted, there's new growth, there's budding, and we're watching some of the pine trees. I think it's still early to see how they do, but we did plant some extra just to give a little buffer to the 120.
Okay. So, none of the saplings you installed were damaged during the windstorm?
No, they all did well.
Nothing
actually.
fell on them?
Nothing fell on them, no.
Okay.
No, it was more in the wet area where
Shallow roots?
the
perimeter
farther, yeah,
Did things like uproot? Like blow over?
the whole, yeah. They didn't have deep root systems, the
Yeah.
pines and.
So, I guess at this point you said things are starting to bud and open up. So are there any signs of outright mortality in the ones that you planted?
I'm watching a few of the pines. I think it's, I don't know whether it's from the spring coming, and so I'm watching those. There's a couple that look like they're brown pine, but overall they really do look good, but
It's too early for any seed to germinate.
yeah. Yes, I didn't see any seed yet. I just checked that Saturday.
Okay.
So,
All right. So Mallory, the next,
I think pretty much after this, they're
just reporting,
yeah,
monitoring and reporting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next reporting deadline is?
I will have to check. I don't know that we specifically.
Okay.
It was monitoring for 2 full growing seasons.
But there
Yeah.
are reporting requirements associated with that, including the invasive species.
Right, that's correct. Based off of the restoration plan is what
Right.
you're referring to.
Yep.
Okay.
So, you'll refresh your memory on those dates?
Yeah, I know that there was a few
Okay.
updates to the plan towards the end of the.
Okay.
Should I follow up with you in your office, make an appointment to see you, or to know when?
If you wanna, you don't have to come in to see me. If you
Okay.
you can always call me. I'm regularly in the office on Mondays and Thursdays from 12 to 2. That's also on the city's website, so
Okay.
you don't even need to make an appointment during those times. You could just come in, or you could call me. We could also talk over email. I think what I like to do is just go back and refresh myself
certainly.
on the plan, and then we could communicate thereafter.
Great.
So would you like an email that I've reviewed it, and then you can let me know what your preference is?
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Yes,
All right,
thank you.
great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for the update. All right, St. Bridget Cemetery, Our Lady of the Valley Parish, Everett Street, map 145, lot 37, EO 2019-001. Is there anyone here for this item? Thank you. Would you care to come forward? Mallory, can you take the lead?
Sure.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening once again to those who are here early. I'm Robert Quinn. I'm an attorney. I represent the Diocese of Springfield and St. Bridget Cemetery. I have the millennials in our firm insisted that we get up-to-date fancy business cards. I'll put that over the table in case anybody wants to know who I am.
Thank you.
Or get in touch with me. We are here. I'm here with the president of Diocesan Cemeteries, which is Joe Costick, and also with the two individuals who are the property managers for St. Bridget Cemetery, Kevin Malloy here, and Dave Paquette here, and also with the wetland scientist that we've nominated to assist us to come into compliance with the compliance order that was issued by the commission, or not yet issued, but certainly received by us and going to be discussed tonight. Vicki Marcus.
Good evening.
You've met Vicki before. Just very briefly, we found the order to be very reasonable, especially the time periods that are contained in the order. We do have some questions for the commission about certain items that are contained in the order, which we would like to discuss tonight. But we find that what we would like to do is advance ourselves, move forward, and not wait until September to address these issues. We'd like to address them as soon as the weather allows, which would be within the next month or two. Get started. Remove anything that shouldn't be near the resource, etc. And Nikki's going to go into that in much more detail. But that would be one of the things we'd like to discuss with you as far as the time and some of the scope. So, would you like to pick up from here?
Yeah, I think if we could we just talk about the issuance of the order and the genesis of this and what the commission found with the issuance of the enforcement order, just so we understand sort of your background of this?
Sure. So I can't remember the exact date, but an adjacent property owner brought the matter to the commission's attention. We did a site visit viewing it from his property. There's a stream, looks like that runs along one side of the cemetery off Everett Street, and it looks like material had been deposited in that stream, variety of material, some concrete debris, some soil and landscaping debris, and then as we walked along his side of the channel, there were areas where it looked like soil had been pushed over the slope at various points and had deposited down in the bottom of the channel. So those were the concerns, that there had been an unpermitted fill of a jurisdictional resource area, and that's how we got to this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think the commission is welcome to go view the property from the cemetery grounds if you desire to do that. So we all went out, viewed the cemetery with the caretakers. They do 8 to 10 burials a year. Their practice is to take excess soil and stockpile it, and that's within 100 feet of where the wetlands are. So they will cease doing that at the moment. They will stockpile the materials and have it trucked off-site, and that'll be part of, I think one of the enforcement order issues was an O&M plan. And so they have some ideas on how to modify the work that they're doing. The concrete, there's concrete material, there's signs, there's debris within 100 feet of the wetlands that the cemetery and the city of Northampton have agreed to remove because the concrete came from the city.
City of Northampton or Easthampton?
I'm sorry, Easthampton.
Okay.
Sorry, I apologize. So the city had placed that there many years ago, and they've agreed to take that away. So I think there's a lot of buffer zone cleanup, and it looks like for those who haven't been there, there's from the pond, there's a drainage channel that goes along the whole length of the cemetery. It doesn't have an upgradient wetland. It's just one of those long drainage channels, but it looks like a small end of it has been filled. And we don't know the extent of it yet until we dig, but I think that part of the restoration plan will address and figure out how much of it, but it's about 50 feet of stream, something like that, that's been filled in the adjacent area. That needs. It looks like it's basically land underwater and bank that's been altered, not BDW. So it's early in the season. It was sort of unreasonable to redelineate it right now. So I think the plan will be to go ahead and initiate, if the commission ratifies the enforcement order, go ahead and initiate all the pieces of the delineation, the O&M plan, the restoration plan, and then the implementation of the plan. I think the commission had set a date in September to complete the work, and I think the cemetery is willing to, the parish, to move that a little more rapidly. I don't think they need as much time. The one issue in the ratification I'd like you to consider is it's a fairly small area to restore. The order right now calls for like weekly monitoring of that work. It's really a couple of days worth of work to remove the fill, restore that area, and 2 years of post-construction monitoring is a lot for the parish. I'd like you to consider just having a post-construction report of what was done, replanting, initiation of the plan. 2 years for the parish is a lot of extra work. So I'd like you just to consider that piece of it to reduce that scope. Otherwise, the O&M plan, I think the gentlemen who maintain the cemetery have some good ideas overall in the whole cemetery. There's some erosion issues that they feel they can also address. So I think they have some good ideas on how to manage the site a little differently and remove materials differently, and we'll include all that in the O&M plan. Attorney Quinn has nominated me. So my name is Mickey Marcus. I'm a professional wetland scientist. I'm also a certified ecological restoration practitioner. I work for SWCA Environmental Consultants in Amherst, and I've been nominated. It's up to you to decide whether I'm appropriate to do that. I will say that in the past, I've been hired by the Easthampton Conservation Commission to do peer reviews, but I haven't done that in a number of years. So I've worked with this city and formerly when it was a town to do work in the city. I think any other comments that you have? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's one step at a time here. So is there any discussion regarding the nomination of Mr. Marcus as the environmental specialist. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, is there a motion to approve the nomination?
A motion to approve Mr. Marcus as the wetland scientist for the cemetery project.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Step 1. All right. Mallory, is it, at this time, 2 years is the standard for a wetland restoration? I'm not so sure I want to, without knowing exactly where the impacts are, I'm not sure at this point in time that I'm comfortable moving off 2 years at this point. I think it should also depend on the nature of what you uncover and what's proposed for restoration, and the success of it after the first year. So I think, in all reality, if the restoration is successful after a full growing season, it's reasonable to assume it might be successful after 2. And I understand that this is not a big project, but the intent is to see the success of this restoration. So I'm open to other points of view.
Instead of weekly monitoring, maybe after significant storm events or something like that, so it's not a weekly thing.
Yeah, I don't think that we ever intended for you to monitor it weekly for 2 years.
No.
It was simply, typically it would be in the spring and in the fall during
I
those
think it was during the active
growing seasons.
work. Well, no, during the active work period.
Right, we had the
similar
week-
to other projects and expectations, so that when work is actively occurring, there's that routine update, but that when the work has been completed, you don't need to keep going out there weekly. And I apologize if that wasn't clear. Because yes, you're right, weekly for 2 growing season is quite burdensome, and that is not the expectation. Yeah. And I guess if you, obviously there's interest in moving this on a more accelerated schedule, and that is something I would suggest that you propose in the restoration plan. As you figure out what you're going to do, if it's reasonable to do it sooner than later, I'd say that's the parish's prerogative, then the commission would certainly entertain that. We didn't want to put an unreasonable expectation on anyone that it be done overnight, practically.
One of the items in the enforcement order is for the parish to appear before you on April 22nd. The option was to also come tonight. Do you also want the parish to be before you on April 22nd?
I don't think that's necessary if you're going to
No.
act as the consultant. I think it was more wanting the parish to have the opportunity to attend. So if they feel comfortable with you acting as their representative from here on out, then that's perfectly acceptable.
Yes, we are. We'd
Okay.
essentially say the same thing for 2 weeks as we said tonight, so.
With 1 person instead of 5. That's fine.
Mhm.
Really appreciate you all taking the time to show up tonight. Thank you. So, next step,
Motion to ratify.
motion to ratify.
Do we need to change any language to clarify?
Changing the language.
Do we
In
need
the
to
order?
change any language to clarify monitoring requirements?
I don't think so. I think that we've always said that it was monitored for 2 years. We've never held anyone to weekly reporting. Weekly reporting stipulated as during the construction period. So I think that it's acceptable. And then in terms of whatever you'd like to propose in terms of changing the timelines, that doesn't need to be in the order, that this is actually more lenient and that they shouldn't change the timeline, but that they would allow you to do that if that's what you wanted to do, of course.
motion to ratify the enforcement order.
As discussed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right. Thank you so
Thank you
much
very
for your
much.
time. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night. Next items on the agenda, open space updates. Echo West Orchard area improvements.
So I forwarded it today, I believe,
Yes.
or last week. Can't remember. I've been doing a lot of forwarding.
You can tell when you're in the office, Mallory.
Great.
20 emails from Mallory. Okay.
15 every day. So Andrew did get out there and he got the mapping done. It's actually not where I thought it was. It's in the area that is the densely planted orchard area. Oh, you got a colored one.
There were a lot of files in there that were database files and shape files.
He
that
sent
were
all the
not-
GPS files.
So it wasn't.
It was,
So as long as
yeah.
there's a PDF.
I have no access to any program that allows me to use shape files either. So yeah, there was
Well, it would be good to save them.
Yes.
For sure. But I understand. But there was a PDF that went with it.
Yeah. So this is in that densely planted orchard area, so I actually don't have concerns about nesting birds in that area.
Okay.
It's not really a meadow at all.
No.
It's a lot of bittersweet, and a lot of really close together apple trees. I think one of the things that I just wanted to clarify was I think a while back, I think you and Julie were talking about maybe checking the wetland areas out there.
Colleen and I had gone out there initially.
Okay. Maybe it was Colleen.
So it's been a while.
Okay.
But as I recall, it was pretty much like over here.
Yeah, it wasn't where their proposed work is, right?
Right. It's more like
Where the,
this area here
correct,
where there are no trees growing.
right.
Okay.
So-
I think there's another one down here, but that's also
That-
not in the
yeah.
area that we're talking about.
Where did you say the other one was?
Sort of in the, yeah.
Oh yes, I remember that one's in the front and the center. Okay.
I mean, this whole hill drains down to that channelized stream down at the south end of the property.
Yeah, so I think this is really helpful in moving forward. Andrew also sent me a draft proposal that I had forwarded to you. So if you want to just have a look at it before your next meeting,
Okay.
to let me know if there's anything that you see that is an issue. I haven't had the opportunity to review it yet. I got it this afternoon. And I think that moving from there on, I think we can go ahead with all this information with a really solid plan to move forward. My understanding is that other than maybe a couple of the heritage trees that we would try to take, I would do the RFP for everything. And if we don't, because I think the intent was we knew that taking out all of the trees probably isn't within the scope of what we have for CPA funds, and that we would just want to make sure that we had the maximum expense so that we could. I think a follow-up question that I had, or that you could think about, was what you want to plant there and what when you're done, because you probably want something that's going to act as a ground cover and not, you know, have some competition with some of the invasives that are out there. And
Has Andrew made any recommendations?
I haven't asked. I'm not sure whether or not that was within the scope of their. I mean, we could also potentially seek other opinions. I just didn't know if any of you felt comfortable with.
Is that your thing? Restoration. Would you be comfortable making a recommendation for discussion purposes?
Possibly. Let me think about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think we can
So-
revisit that part.
So we'll revisit the scope of their proposal and potential restoration measures. Is there any further discussion at this time?
Nope.
Okay. Next item, Lathrop Community of Easthampton, Florence Road Conservation Land Discussion. Anyone from Lathrop? Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Mark Arnold from Berkshire Design. On behalf of Lathrop Communities. Give a second to set up.
We're talking about this under the order, the open order conditions,
No,
or something
this is
totally different?
different.
All right. Now for something completely different. It's so quiet in here, I feel like.
Pass out some photos which you probably are aware of. This essentially shows the open space and conservation areas adjacent to Lathrop community. Let's put some context here.
I'll share.
We can share.
I'm not gonna open it that much.
First of all, thank you. Berkshire Designs sent a letter to you on March 25th, essentially describing some of the permitting history on the Lathrop community. And then Jeff Bagg, I believe, sent you a letter today, same thing, essentially regurgitating exactly what we had found out previously. And just real quick, trying to do a Reader's Digest version, rather than going to each and every step along the way. Just want to go back to 1996, I believe it was. Originally had the Lathrop community came into the commission and the planning board and asked for permission to build some assisted living facilities out here. At that point in time, from the planning board perspective, the plan stated there would be 3 open space areas. The plan said that there was nothing on the approval that stipulated that those open spaces would be required to be a part of the plan. Came back with an amendment to add some more units. At that point in time, it's the amended special permit essentially said you will follow with a previous permit, including instituting the conservation restriction on the open spaces. At that point in time, a plan was prepared which actually showed it's different spaces with actual areas associated with those. It came out to be about 75 acres of open space on the project. There are several other amendments to the special conditions of the planning board. Essentially, each one of those amendments stipulated that the previous conditions would be maintained. The open space conservation restriction, as of this date, has not actually been executed. And what we would like to do is have a discussion with the planning board to make sure that as we go forward here, we do institute a conservation restriction which is in the best interest of the town and Lathrop community as well. Again, this was the plan that accompanied the 1996 scenario. The wetlands were approved at that point in time. We recently had the site re-surveyed and new wetland boundaries have been established, which are these current wetland regulations, wetland delineations. They're different, but they're similar, but obviously different. And it's fairly obvious that the previous open space areas were predicated upon actually wetland flagging. We have different flagging today, and what we'd like to do situation, come up with a realistic conservation restriction area, which helps with conservation, helps with the Lathrop community future planning, and satisfies the planning board requirements for providing open space as well. But obviously, at least a 75-acre target still being maintained, and hopefully a little bit more. Some of the minor nuances that we were looking for as we're proposing to expand it, and so sort of go back to this project here, is this location here, we're very close to the existing buildings. This is what has been built. There's been some a little bit different here, but we're very close here, and we probably, in the future, would like to be able to get through here, and we might be touching a wetland. We're not talking about loan order conditions or asking for a wetland permission yet, but we might be very close to this location. And so when we go to the conservation restriction, we're not talking about modifying the wetlands. We may not want it to encumber this location here, this one small location. Where this existing road comes down here right now, the previous delineation has some space between where the roadway is and where the wetlands are. And I'll just go back to the same, these are sort of the critical areas. Right now, the wetlands, as you see, encroach right up to the existing roadway. They touch them. So if in the future, for whatever reason, they had to do some maintenance work, etc., they would like to have at least a buffer there. I've been on other projects where we had a conservation restriction, and we literally, due to the project, went 2 or 3 feet beyond that. It was a nightmare because this has to be approved. The language in that becomes very, very specific, very, very difficult to modify it. So again, we're not here to ask the commission to modify the wetland delineation, to modify any work, or to ask for any work. We just want to make sure when we institute the conservation restriction that it's done with everyone's best interest in mind. The handout that I gave you primarily, in the back, it shows that you can sort of see the dark green. Here's the Lathrop community. You'll notice there's open space here. There's open space here as well. And this, by creating the legal conservation restriction here, would provide a single corridor all the way through here. So it's a beneficial, economical, environmental, great idea to do that. And again, we just want to have a discussion with you to make you comfortable. We can prepare a plan that satisfies your desires, or I have you bless it, make sure we go through the planning board to bless it, so that we can comfortably go through and finalize the ultimate build out of this project in a logical manner. That's our 2-second digest, and would be love to hear your comments, questions regarding that. And there's a lot more history about what the Lathrop community has been doing. They're stewards of the land, doing invasive weed control out there. They've got permission to do that, been following through, looking to get grants to increase that money. So I don't know if the Lathrop community would like to speak to that or not, or if you have some more questions or comments regarding that as well.
Could I ask you to bring that plan closer?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So.
Did the before and after, was there an increase or decrease in wetland area?
I'm saying there was a decrease. Primarily, I think there maybe wasn't really a decrease. Probably they just stopped looking. I think there were some isolated upland areas up in here, which may have changed. You know, there was some creep, they say next to the roadway, where this creeped up in here, but I didn't really check and see. Again, these areas were the quoted areas for open space. And you can see there's gaps in the wetlands here. So the wetlands continued on through here as well. For future open space, this area here is upland, probably not accessible. Maybe that could be more conservation land. The areas that would be sensitive to this development, maybe the conservation restriction just stops in this location, just to make sure we're not getting ourselves in trouble in the future.
Thank you.
So, where is Bassett Brook on this delineation? Just so I
Bassett
can-
Brook must be right here.
Okay, so there'd be some riverfront area, potentially some BLSF.
The-
This is just BVW boundaries.
Strictly BVW, yes.
Okay.
And they have some concepts regarding the next phase and ultimate build out, but we want to make sure we don't spend our time doing the design, and then have a conservation restriction which prevents us from moving forward.
So, and just to be clear, the details of the conservation restriction are really a planning board issue. Is that correct?
Correct. I believe it's a requirement from the planning board that it be issued, and there's specific language actually in the Easthampton bylaw about what entails a conservation restriction. Either the town holds it or a another party from the private party holds it.
Jeff and I
Another
went
party, like
over.
Conservation, like a land trust?
Yes.
No, not like a land trust.
Yeah, Jeff and I went over the language in the ordinance, and yeah, there was like it's two specific routes, but always it's either the land is owned by remains in the ownership of like a homeowners association, and then the CR is held by the commission, or the land is transferred in ownership to a nonprofit, and then the commission still holds the CR. So the commission holds the CR in every instance, according to my understanding of the bylaw. So I think that was just something that we were going through. I'm not sure what anyone's preference is, but
Right, and the detail of who and how that happens, I guess we're more looking at the delineation to make sure that what we choose is, again, you're not really issuing a CR, but we definitely feel you're the most important person or people to oversee this, because ultimately the Conservation Commission typically is
they have to agree
oversees the
you have
CR.
to agree to the CR. So that usually comes with the commission wanting baseline documentation and things of that nature. So I know you're basically with the new delineation, because the existing open space that was proposed long ago, like you were saying, it was based off of wetland boundaries. Is that accurate?
Yes, I think it's apparent from that plan. Again, it was never specifically stated. There was a plan that shows those areas, but again, looking at the plans closely, it seemed that was based upon wetlands, and those wetlands obviously have changed. The flags are not there. It would be very difficult to delineate that as an open space conservation area.
So this is kind of a tangential question, but there's an open order of conditions for the invasive species management work that Barbara has been, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking, but that you've been spearheading. Thank you. And because that order's open, the what? Well, I'm not saying that this isn't accurate or more accurate. I'm just saying that while there's an open order, that's the boundary that stands. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean,
more or less, unless there's
I mean,
a
a lot of
mutual
times-
finding of,
yeah. I mean, a lot of the times,
etc.
a lot of the times it's not the same as setting a boundary with an ANRAD. When you're looking at a notice of intent, it's usually not. You're not requiring that level of documentation. So, but I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think that's a very technical clarification.
I think unless you specifically exclude approval of the boundary, it's a
It can
default
continue, yeah.
approval.
That would be if we were discussing some Wetlands Protection Act related issue with this, though,
True,
and we're not.
but we're discussing an issue around wetland boundaries and.
I think that what my understanding is that you're looking to conserve or to fulfill the CR and the open space subdivision requirements that were part of the planning board approval, and that it just so happened that the only records of that are based off of conveying open land based off of a wetland delineation. So right now you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what is actually the best way to do it? So it sounds like you pretty much want to have a fairly consistent footprint, but maybe it's not based off of the wetland boundaries exactly. Is that accurate?
Yes, I guess I don't think we're extremely concerned about what the delineation of the conservation restriction area is. There were just a couple of modifications to that plan, and we want to try to make sure is encompassed in the new plan so it doesn't hinder future development. And we're looking at probably two very specific small areas,
Yeah.
very small areas, which would be slightly modified from that plan.
I mean, I think in general, having straighter lines and straighter boundaries.
It would be much
is-
easier I would pity the
Surveyor?
lawyer trying to delineate the boundaries of the conservation restriction based upon either that plan or this plan. It'd be nice to just draw straight lines and make sure we encompass
Or straight as you
most of the
can.
wetlands. Again, the conservation restriction doesn't have to encompass all the wetlands. That one didn't, and this one doesn't. It's just, I think that's the general intent, to go back to this plan here.
So that kind of speaks to a vague pattern that I've observed in a few different subdivisions in the city, and that was that conservation restrictions in the land acquired and/or the land put under the city's name as open space was essentially the undevelopable land.
Yeah, there's actually.
And is that the intent of the ordinance? Because there are layers of protection established in the regulations for that purpose. So it's I don't want to say what good does it do, but at the same time, is it really, what additional preservation is being achieved?
It's already in the current regulations in 2019, a little bit different than the regulations were in 2006.
True.
Or I'm sorry, 1996. So you are essentially already somewhat protected here. But there is upland areas and up in here that, I think they're willing to just talk about. If we could just make some logical assumptions about where conservation restrictions occur, it would make life simpler for everyone, I think.
And I think there's definitely value in preserving, in general, in preserving uplands in proximity to wetlands, so that you can have that diversity and habitat type protected in perpetuity. So, I mean, it seems like the intent was to preserve land. And I think this more nuanced delineation shows more opportunity for preserving edge, upland edge,
Yeah.
adjacent to wetlands.
Yeah.
I think our intent is to get your input, come back with a definitive plan. We didn't want to start drawing lines until we discussed with you. If you're comfortable with us drawing some straight lines, we can follow wetlands wherever you want to, except for those certain areas we would like to exclude to make sure we're not going to get in trouble. And if you're comfortable with us helping us draw some lines, we would love it, or we can just come back. Now we've had this initial discussion and show you what we've come up with.
I think if you could provide a proposal.
Well, that would definitely not happen tonight.
No, I mean in the future,
Yeah.
like that you might want to.
Again, this is an informal
think that-
discussion. We're not.
Yeah, no,
formally
understood,
requesting anything
understood.
tonight.
And based on the head shaking from Mr. Stover,
May I make some comments?
please?
I'm really reluctant to say this because Lathrop Community's been probably the best steward of open space in the city. Or none.
Agreed.
That said, for 20 years, Lathrop Community has skated along with this untenable situation. You know, if there have been a major violation, which to my understanding there hasn't been, who would know, you know, what the liability is, how to enforce the phantom CR, which clearly, as pointed out, admitted, was a wetland delineation. And I don't know the city's past or current zoning regulations and open space requirements well enough to opine whether they were met with that original plan.
Mhm.
I don't know when the original plan was approved, which I understood involved a lot of controversy, which I was not involved with, party to. There was a plan for development that was based on that open space dedication, which never happened. I think Lathrop at least once has come back with an expansion that again was predicated on some, well, they kept pointing back to previous permits. And at this point, Lathrop wants to do more expansion. So that would argue to me that the city in general has to be very stringent about what is accepted in terms of the open space. And as you pointed out, I'm pretty sure that it's not the city's intent or the letter of the open space provisions to merely accept land that can't be developed. This is absolutely one of the most critical areas in Easthampton. And until Lathrop came along, was farm fields and pine forests. And it caused a lot of pain, I know, even as an outsider, for people in the community to see that land develop. I don't want to rewrite ancient history at this point, but that does need to be kept in mind. And on a more positive note, let me say that I look at this and I think that it's a nightmare for everybody involved. Particularly if their conservation restriction is put in place, no one's going to know where those boundaries are. I can picture, this comment we've learned, you got a monument boundaries between development and conservation areas. And that would be a $1.5 million surveyors that go out there and put a monument every turn, twist and turn in the boundary.
So you're advocating straight lines there, in general?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But that said, except in really critical instances, I think your point about an existing roadway that is going to require maintenance at some point, it's already there. You don't want to create additional issues for Lathrop in rebuilding that road or whatever it might be. But you do want to see a boundary that really protects something other than just what can't be developed. And I think the most productive thing really is for Lathrop to give some intimation as to what your expansion plans are. And I think there should be an understanding that it's not an infinite proposition. Lathrop can't keep coming back and adding more and more units. Again, I don't know what the permitted density was and what it might be now. But I assume that there's some fairly concrete parameters about what would be desirable financially in terms of the market and the rest of it in determining the scale of the expansion. I'd rather see some squares that represent new townhouses that could be over here or down here, and then work from that to come up with a really exciting conservation area delineation that would serve Lathrop well in terms of improving privacy for some of the units. And I was a little uncertain about the public access, whether that's something that does want to see or doesn't want to see, but I would clearly influence where those boundaries might be drawn. Maybe it's just a trail card or two would be not okay. Because this is a really exciting area with potential for that. But public access to all of the open space is not necessary.
Feasible, even?
Was that?
Advisable, is that what you said?
Well, I think, clearly people have a lovely place to live out there, and having the white boy wandering around, peering in your windows is not something that any of us want. So if there were a couple of corridors that ran through the open space that made for usable public trails, and the rest of it, frankly, I'd rather not see people wandering all over the place, because it is such an important ecological area.
So, thank you for that. I don't think anyone sitting up here was around when this was initially laid out. I do have a question. What, if any, so there's reference to continued agricultural uses, at least from the initial stages of things. Is any of the land that looks like it might be open farm fields still in agricultural use by agreement with any? No, so there's no longer any active agricultural use of the land?
I think on the last page of Jeff Begg's letter, he had a map showing all the agricultural areas that were originally approved.
They seem to have been approved now, odd. I'm not sure which way.
Very last
There's a
page.
green, yeah. This seems to not,
What do you get from A to B?
it's quite odd, just
So that was
considering
that.
that there was no.
It's a little,
But the
I mean,
open
obviously,
space
this is
requirements
this. This is maybe over. It's a little hard to go from A to B.
Yeah, I think this isn't part of the.
Somewhere in there.
This is somewhere
I
down
think
here.
this was this,
Right, correct.
or this was this, became this.
And this is
This
the
is-
Northampton site here.
yeah, so here's
This-
yeah.
This is that area
So,
here.
would it be, for the purposes of furthering our thoughts in this discussion, would it be feasible for you to send a PDF of this,
From Garrett?
but also have the Bassett Brook turned on and any other stream features? I'm not sure if you can incorporate that
Oh, yeah.
data from the delineation of Mass
see.
GIS. So,
Right.
I don't want to scare you, so this was 2003 concept plans,
okay.
but that shows you the brook.
Yeah, so,
This is not what they're proposing, to tell you that.
no, I thank you for that. Understood that this is
But
old.
that shows you the entire scale and where the brook is at. And we can add the brook to this one.
And then is this just a wetland crossing or is there a stream there?
There is a wetland crossing there existing, yes.
Okay, but not a stream.
I don't believe it's a perennial stream. It might be an intermittent.
That's right.
I would think it probably is intermittent anyway.
It doesn't look like there's a stream.
So I guess if you could
Like a
forward to
field.
Mallory, this is a PDF, as well as this drawing with the stream shown on it as well. That would be very. And then Mallory, if you could, when you get that, if you could forward it with a link to the zoning, is it the zoning ordinance?
Yeah, I
Or-
also have it if you want it. I think the main problem is that the requirements for what percentage of land should not be wetland is limited by the fact that most of this parcel is wetland. So,
The way the ordinance is written, or just
Yeah.
in practical
Right.
application?
the way that it's written, so the ordinance, which to my understanding hasn't changed in language, it's only changed in numbering, since the 90s, says that, the open space area should be at least 50% of the total parcel area, of which at least 75% should not be vegetated wetlands or wetlands in the Wetlands Protection Act. But most of the parcel is wetland, so that would be challenging. It defines it as parcel.
Well, there's And in Easthampton, there's one parcel. And then the other land of Lathrop in Northampton, which we have no, yeah.
So,
So you can, but you can also send that link to us.
yeah, I can send you just, do you want the section that's just the open space residential development?
Sure.
Okay. It's section 9, just in case you were wondering, just in case you got excited. Yeah, I think that, I mean, going back to what Garrett was saying, it's really kind of challenging to go back afterwards and say, oh, well, it didn't, maybe it didn't meet these things that it was supposed to because it's already built. So kind of at this point, you know, we just tried it the best that we can to get.
Yeah, I think we're hindered by the original decision by the planning board in 1996 to create this open space, and they approved amendments after that. Again, I think it's obviously, no matter what we and you decide, right now, the planning board has to approve it, and I think ultimately you have to accept it, so we're in a step process here. We're trying to do it in a logical, friendly manner.
Absolutely.
And efficiently.
And if you can, I think it will help tremendously to receive that information so that as we try to put all the pieces together in our minds, we have something discrete to look at that defines the site.
Do you have an idea about whether or not the Lathrop still wants to keep the land in their ownership? Is
I
that?
would have to ask Lathrop if you're intending to keep the land or deed it to the town, or?
I think the options are to deed it to a nonprofit, or to keep it, and then the CR is always with the city.
Yeah, so I think that for me, Tom Wright, CEO, it's undecided because I'm still learning. And what I discovered 6 years ago when I joined was that we had not fulfilled this obligation and promise. And so that sort of began our impetus to really understand the land and take the lead from the conservation and open space that we need to preserve. And then decide for ourselves what else is maybe left over to build, but we don't intend to build on all of our buildable land. So I think to your point, that's a good point. So I don't know that. We would take some advice from those that we're working with to understand best how that should be preserved moving forward and managed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you have a strong stewardship program and folks involved at this point, I don't think that, I mean, to deed it to the nonprofit is kind of it's an expense to manage the land also. So I think that it would probably be preferable that, you know, you're doing a good job now, and that it's important that those who live at Lathrop have an investment in the stewardship of that land. So I think that one of the things we were kind of looking at was going back in the zoning ordinance was that there's a requirement for covenants that were to protect that land and to make sure that if it wasn't being properly managed, that the city could tax the association or the corporation for any expenses that. I think that there's some language in the ordinance, I guess, that just ties back to how they intended to protect.
I think the language, how it's written, what it says, the delineation, but language, I guess, is going to be up to lawyers better than I. But who ultimately maintains and stewards land could be decided. I guess tonight we're looking primarily to find out what is an appropriate delineation. Not decided tonight, but discussed tonight.
Right.
Delineation of the open space.
Yes.
For the conservation restriction.
Yes, understood. Has there been any new interest in the land stewardship group that's been spearheading the invasive species management? Have new residents or
yes,
other people been getting involved? It's not just falling on your shoulders?
Yes. I'm Barbara Walbert. I'm a resident. I am the chair of the Land Conservation committee. This is Sharon Grace. She's also on the committee. And Tom Wright and the administration at Lathrop have been working closely with us and very supportive. We continue this project. We have raised thousands from our own residents to pay contractors to remove invasives from a lot of the land that will certainly be in the conservation restriction, however it's drawn. And we now have about 50 acres and moving forward on our campus, most of it in land that will certainly be included in the CR, that are virtually free of invasives. If you walk there, it's very rare to see a bittersweet, a rose, a honeysuckle. Years ago when we started, there was lots of it in that woods. Now, almost none. And we monitor it all the time with volunteers who spend hundreds of hours doing that. So we now have a grant from the city of Northampton to push forward the boundaries on which we're removing invasives on the west side of Bassett Brook, and to do follow-up on what we did last year, because you know this stuff comes up again. And so we just received a grant from the city of Northampton to continue that work on their side, and we're also, of course, pushing forward the work on the Easthampton side. So yes, this is going forward very strongly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Welcome. All right, so we'll get more information.
The additional information, I just want to clarify, obviously we'll send you the two PDFs.
Yep, this is a PDF, this with Bassett Brook added.
Correct.
So you can, again, kind of get that reference point, because and it's not specific to Lathrop, it's several other subdivisions in other parts of the city where a few years back when the commission divvied up city-owned conservation land, and we went out and took a look at them. A lot of them were seriously hindered by, from a developer's perspective, by streams and floodplain and wetlands. And so while it met the letter of the requirements of the open space preservation, it certainly did not meet the spirit. And it was wetlands to the extent that the city could not have considered even developing a footpath or a trail, walking trail system on them. So that kind of stuck with me as kind of a good, best of intentions sort of thing, but a failure. So I want to see what, want to be well informed about what lies where, not just from vegetated wetlands, but also riverfront area. I know there's a certified vernal pool mapped in one of these wetlands.
There are several vernal pools. We have certified 3 of them. This spring we've just found wood frogs, and 2 more. We'll certify those soon.
Fantastic. So that's
it's a racket out there.
The best kind. Okay.
So do you have in front of you, I'm sorry, is that the new delineation?
Yes. So when was this done and by whom?
I believe Ward Smith did delineation.
Okay.
And
I don't see a note.
It doesn't say on there who did it. But it was just done this last year.
Okay.
And I'm also just asking, would it make sense for us to do a highlighter line saying, here's a suggested CR for purpose of discussion? I definitely want to vet it through the owners first.
You're certainly welcome to include that for consideration.
The only official one we have is this right now, and it's not really very specific, and I would hate to write a CR on that.
Sure. Yeah.
So and maybe taking this and make sure we maintain the same leased area, and maybe,
looks like about 75 acres.
Yeah, at least 75 acres. And I think with that delineation, I think it's probably includes a whole lot more upland than was originally delineated on this plan.
Okay.
Would it be helpful to have the location of vernal pools on here in addition to Bassett Brook?
Is that something you could easily add?
Put area underneath it?
That and/or, yes, and the GIS, the vernal pool locations?
They're on GIS, I'm assuming, on Mass GIS.
Yep. They have certified in potential.
Okay, so we'll add the Bassett Brook
and
vernal pools on that. Maybe give you a separate one with concept A, concept B for delineation of conceptual CR delineations.
That sounds like a step in the right direction.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
I will let you take this with you, though. This is your board.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So we'll keep this on for the next agenda, Mallory. So we'll continue this discussion at our April 22nd meeting. And you're welcome to join us.
Sarah, did you want to share this?
Okay.
You gave that to us a long time ago.
All right.
Straight line, yeah.
Does anyone need to stand up before we move on to the next items?
We can, if you'd like.
Keep going.
Michael needs,
Blow through
Michael
it.
stood up. Plow through?
Just do
Okay.
it.
All right. Compliance updates. Ready, set, go. Mallory, Pleasant Street Mills, DP file number 151273.
No.
We received an update from Lathrop on their invasive species, I believe. So we have that progress report. Thank you. Williston Northampton School, off Taft Ave, file number 151286.
Not to my knowledge.
Nothing. Nashwauk Pond, 151288.
My understanding is that they would like to be on your April 22nd agenda.
For what purpose?
I'm not entirely clear. It was kind of an in-passing conversation with Gary Golis from when we were discussing the Water Chestnut project with
Okay.
Cynthia Bonner. So I think I'm trying to work on clarifying that with him, but I think
Okay.
they're planning to do a treatment this year.
I mean, he's certainly welcome to speak under this agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
but it would be
We can just.
helpful to know, maybe tell him, try to keep it to 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah, I was trying to ask about, I'm not really super familiar with this permit, only because they didn't do that treatment last year.
Mm-hmm.
But typically I've seen, before treatment that it's a requirement to have a density survey. Do you have a
I
requirement
believe
for
the
that?
conditions all,
Okay.
if you pull the file,
Okay.
we were very specific about identifying, measuring progress and success, and using that to inform the following treatment,
Yeah.
and notifying the commission in advance and posting notice at public, typical public access points prior to the treatment and while the treatment's occurring, and then
Okay.
for several days after.
Okay.
So that should all be
Okay.
in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know that they're not going to have a density survey as early as April, so it
Right.
seems, I'm not sure, maybe he has something else that he wants to discuss.
Okay. I know that one's always contingent upon funding.
I don't know too much about that end of things.
Fair enough. Loven Properties, 151287. Is anything happening out
I
there?
haven't seen it in a week, but prior to that, there was nothing happening.
I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Obviously, we've talked about Riverside Industries. James LeGrand, 19 River Street, 151291. No
No.
updates. City of Easthampton, Whitebrook, Broadbrook, 151268.
No.
Holistic Industries, 155 Northampton Street, 151296. There was some correspondence, Mallory? Some email?
So I had just been trying to follow up with Mark Reed. He sent me an email. I had sent him an email a while back, and he with the outstanding conditions, and he hadn't responded. I think it was over like maybe 2 weeks almost.
Well, there's an email to Mark, etc. March 28th.
Yes, I think that's what it was. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's 12 days. So I had just followed up with him again today, and then he did respond, but it was very late, so I haven't looked at it yet.
So where do they stand with the pre-construction submittals that they are delinquent on?
So I went out there. The two things that they were really outstanding on was the reflagging the wetland, and then the update to the invasive species management plan that they were supposed to They were supposed to update it. I went out there today. They haven't seemed to be doing much work over there since the initial clearing of vegetation that they had done on the asbestos removal with the roofing. If you look over there, half the roof's missing, or those shingles are. The flagging was there. I saw the flagging. There's new flags there, but I still haven't gotten the update on the plan. And then there should be. We had over a quarter. No,
Yes,
yeah.
by this morning.
Yeah.
The weekend was questionable. Friday night was questionable.
It was kind of snowy.
There was snow and then there was rain, so I think the total non-snow precipitation was less than 1/4 of an inch.
Yeah.
But by this morning, we had 1/2 inch
Yeah.
in Western Mass.
So there should be a report then. It hasn't looked like that they've been doing too much over there though lately, so I'm not sure. I had sent an email with the first SWIP report that he had sent because there was a huge. There's basically the way that the gravel back parking lot is now is it kind of like actually orients towards the wetland. So there was a lot of stormwater that had pooled, and it was you could clearly see that it was ending up under the silt fence. So I had asked him to propose a construction period B&P for that, but I also didn't hear back from him on that. So I'm hoping that he has some information in his most recent correspondence.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You are out of the office the rest of the week. Is that correct? So, if the SWIFT inspection report is submitted, bless you. A timely response is going to be difficult. I mean, they're supposed to do the inspection within 24 hours, so.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering how you think we should handle that. If they submit it and there's an issue, or they submit supplemental erosion controls.
Other than that particular area, I mean, I went out there today and it was stable. So I did do an inspection today because I knew that there had been a rainfall event. I hadn't heard from Mark, and I wasn't sure if I was going to hear from him for today. So I actually did go out there and I took site pictures. So the area is stable.
Okay.
So I'm not concerned about it.
Okay. Right. Next item. 1 Industrial Lofts LLC, 1 Ferry Street, Tracks 1 and 2, DEP file numbers 151 and 298 and 299.
No update.
No update. The orders have not yet been recorded, to your knowledge.
I have not received notification of recording.
There's work happening though, isn't there?
Is
That big
there?
excavator that's in there, and it seems like part of a wall is down that wasn't down before.
I'm not aware of that. If you want to.
Does anyone know if
The
that's-
excavator's been there a while.
Has it always
but-
been there?
Yeah, it's been there for months.
And we're on the bike path side, the middle building had a huge section of wall blown out. Was it blown out on both sides?
I don't know that.
I don't
I'm not sure
remember
they-
it being.
I'm not sure they could even get to there to work on that section. I think that's maybe just been caved in by itself.
On the inside?
On the rail trail side.
On the outside has
Yeah.
been that way, but it's now
Yeah.
the opposite side is also
Okay.
gone.
I can look at it.
I assumed it was new, but it could be that I just don't remember.
Are you talking about a north side of the north bike path side?
Where it
Crosses.
right before it was, there's always been a hole here, but now there's a hole on the interior side of that building. Like both, like you could just go straight through.
Did anyone?
A big hole with a giant pile of bricks.
I thought I might have noticed that when we were out in our field visit. Did anybody else remember?
I don't remember.
But I couldn't recall if it had been pre-existing because there was a lot of works down in that area.
Now, remember the RDA from 100 years ago?
Yep.
You, really?
Vaguely.
I mean, so we did an RDA.
But that expired.
Did it?
Oh,
Yeah,
that's why they have
right.
notices of intent.
Right. But that was just like for ongoing, knocking walls down whenever they wanted, right?
More or less.
But that's expired.
Long.
All right.
When was that?
100 years ago.
Same owner?
I have no idea.
Yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know, Jay has the flight information, the photo.
Yeah, I don't, I can look at it and just try to
Yeah,
understand
why-
whether that
oh.
time frame of that wall is.
Okay.
So should we move on?
Yeah.
But orders have not been recorded yet. That's
Not to Mallory's
a
knowledge.
takeaway. And there's been no pre-construction submittals.
Ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Easthampton Park Solar 1 LLC, 232 Park Street, DP file number 151293.
No update on this one either, and no knowledge of recording.
River Valley Cooperative Market, 228 Northampton Street, DEP file number 151301.
No update and no knowledge of recording on that one either.
Okay. Moving on to general business. Meeting minutes, March 25th, 2019.
They were great.
Whoever that note taker was, that was awesome.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Guess I'm abstaining.
Mr. Patrick abstains due to absence. Anyone else abstaining because they weren't here? Well, no, you
I
were.
thought there was one other person.
But I can motion to
You can
accept,
make a
right?
motion.
I have to.
Yes.
I read that.
Okay. All right. Correspondence and agent updates.
Oh, gosh.
I have a
Wow.
couple items. One is that you got a notice of intent today that I forwarded.
Yes, you did. Receipt.
From the city for the pump house.
Demo and
Demo.
removals.
Yeah.
Demolition.
And I had,
We could leave it there.
I guess.
that had been reported, I got you were on the notification from Mark, right, that they got it?
Yes, DEP has received it.
And then I was asked to coordinate this appropriate signature from the city, so I gave that to Jeff, and Jeff got it signed by the mayor today, so I sent that over to y'all and to DEP.
Jens? So, out of curiosity, why did the mayor sign it and not Jonathan Flagg? If he's listed as the applicant?
Yeah, I guess, so I think the way that she had signed it was, let's see. Well, the reason basically was John's gonna have to issue a demo permit, and he's gonna have to issue permits for that work. So it kind of didn't, I didn't know why he had filed it with his name, but I had just said, Jeff, if you want to have the mayor sign it, it's city property, that makes sense. So I think that's just kind of the way that we ended up.
Okay. So this is interesting point of clarification. Well, I'm not sure what these little red squares are supposed to be here, but they can explain that. Okay, so we have received this. This will be included on the commission's April 22nd, 2019 meeting agenda at 6 p.m. Mallory, are you handling the newspaper ad for this, or?
Not to my knowledge. I think I don't know really anything about it except that we had been asked about the exemption for some of the demo work, and we had said that I responded to that there was not a blanket
There does not appear to be an exemption that applies to this activity.
And then I got and then I helped them with the signature, and I wasn't aware that they were going to ask me to do that either. So I just passed that off to Jeff and had Jeff handle it. So my understanding is that that RLA should be doing the legal ad, or that the whoever else is working on in the city that will do that.
Could you just confirm that Levesque or the building inspector's office will make
Yeah.
sure that that happens? Otherwise, we can't open the hearing.
Right.
So that applies to abutter notifications as well.
Yeah, I did talk to Nick from RLA today, who said that he had abutter notifications in hand and that he was doing them today.
Great.
So I know that they're doing that part of it. They were kind of, Mike Owens, who's the treasurer, was the one who was initially coordinating this, so I didn't even know that John was still involved in this. So it's just gonna take a little bit of emailing around.
Yeah. Okay. I guess.
Are the abutters that aren't the city all on the other side of the pond?
Well, the pond
It's
is
mostly city
a
land,
the
isn't
pond
it?
is a parcel.
The pond is a parcel.
I believe the
itself.
pond is a parcel in and of itself.
So
If
are
you look
there
at
any
the,
non-city abutters?
there appear to
It is the part, it is.
be, yes.
What's the distance? Is it 100 or is it 500?
It's 100 from the parcel.
Sorry.
Proposed. But it gets funky with water, but the water's wider than 100 feet, so
Yeah.
it's not, I've just got
I forget
this.
what happens then. It seems like all of this would be city land within 100 feet.
If they want to notify more than they're
Sure,
required to, then
yeah.
that's their prerogative. So,
I didn't think the city owned the pond itself. I thought that was some
it
other.
owns part of the pond. I think there's like a line down the middle.
So usually, like when I have like herbicide projects in a pond, you notify everyone within 100 feet of if you're on the pond. So they're like, that pump house is technically on the pond, so maybe that's what they were doing.
It says City of Northampton for any of that water that's where the pump house.
Easthampton?
Sorry, yeah, right. Caught it from that guy.
You got it. It's catching. It's okay. Okay, so that's not really something to be concerned
Alright.
with now. So this will be on the agenda. Now,
6 p.m.
it's pretty accessible. We have site plans. Does anyone, how do folks feel about trying to get out there on their own prior to the next meeting?
I think it's easy to do it. We
It's
don't-
an
adventure.
I was thinking about renting boats and maybe we should paddle out
You
there.
can see a lot of turtles in that pond. It's good for turtles, for sure.
See if we can get over the dam on a paddle boat.
Okay, moving
down
on.
through.
Mallory, are there any other correspondence or updates you'd like to bring to our attention?
Sorry to interrupt.
Hello,
Is
there's
that
quite
the
all of it.
conference room?
There's one right there.
This is it, right?
Yeah. Yes. So.
No worries.
No, that's fair. So I had spoken to Mass Audubon about the water chestnut program that Cynthia Butner had asked us about, and you know, from my conversation with the commission and then my conversation with Jeff, I think that the main thing that we were concerned about was the training aspect, and that if there were volunteers that were lost, that, you know, we didn't really have the resources to train anyone. So I reached out to Mass Audubon, and Jonah had said that they do it regularly on Saturday morning as a volunteer project, so that any person that would want to learn could go and get that training. So it seems like the thing that we were looking to be fulfilled, that would have been the time obligation, that Mass Audubon's willing to assist with that. So
that's wonderful.
I think moving forward, the thing that we're gonna need is the filing of the RDA.
I mean, that, I think, is a pretty light lift. I would hope perhaps someone in the planning department would put a limited effort to just so that administratively this is covered. Anything else?
I wasn't here for the prior conversation, but I led Water Chestnut before. I could also contribute
Okay.
some time on a Saturday.
Okay.
Thank you. Excuse me.
You okay?
I don't know where my voice went. It's on.
No, that's all for me.
Okay. Although, point of order, Mallory is not in the office the rest of the week.
Yeah, I'll be back next Tuesday.
So if you need to reach Mallory, you can't.
Email Jeff.
Fair enough.
No.
All right. For the record, Commission is in receipt of a notice of intent, Mass DEP file number 151297, filed by Easthampton Park Solar 1 LLC for solar project at Westview Terrace, map 165, lot 47, filed 4/10/2018, identified as date of filing by Mass DEP. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.